Okay, so since I am doing testing because it's all new ground to me, I thought I'd go ahead and add a little enjoyment to it. For one thing, I'm trying my iPhone instead of iPad for the first time. So the first time I'm using the dongle. And I did notice that also on my iPad, I can only hear it through one ear, so I have no idea how this is coming through. I will have to revisit that later because, and I got to stick with what I'm doing here because it'll be quicker and it'll give you a bit of a reward for sticking with it. Okay, so since I'm trying different things, I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead a bit as far as not a full trailer or anything, but I keep on talking about different things I'm writing and stories or characters, and I'm realizing, well, unless you happen to know my webpage, which for some reason I keep forgetting to give, for my blog where my stories are, it'd be fitting to give a little sample. And since also I'm not used to recording it with my voice, just fingertips, then, this will be good practice too. And to give you a good idea of a couple of different examples of what I got going on, because I'm going to start with a bit out of the first episode of the Bold and Restless Lives, the ongoing soap opera that will continue on and on. And then the other is going to be a portion from the beginning of Patches, a story that's, it's going to have its oddities, of course, but it's a little more subtle in its oddities, and it'll give you more of a dramatic sense of some of my writing. And then that way I can get these out there and then work to have hopefully a produced complete episode by Monday, and then maybe even begin either Wednesday or Friday next week for the alternating between the soap and the other stories I'll have to tell. Like Patches will probably end up being a 3 or 4 part, so say it'll take around about a month if it's every other week, or maybe a month and a half if it's every other week. So that'll be about the length of time that it'll take. So just like your serial, it's kind of like a mini series used to be, except a little bit longer parts or more parts is what I mean. So here's what I got for you. We'll give this a test out, and then I'm going to work on all these different ins and outs and who's and what's it's that I got going on with the microphone and the iPhone and the iPad and the dongles and the cords and the cables and the mic to mic and anyway. Oh, don't get me wrong, I'm loving it. So here we go. I think I'll start with the silly for you, and that is the soap opera, of course. And it's going to be, everything is kind of formatted slightly differently, and this one definitely is. You'll notice there is a pre-credits sequence. I messed that one up, but remember, people, painkillers. And of course, like I said, it also has a credits at the end, the cast, and after that, a final scene. And, all kind of split up a little bit differently. Is the way I've got it going now. This Patches is going to kind of connect two different people who unexpectedly found each other and are also unexpectedly coming from similar places, despite 25 years age difference, just about. My heroine is a young Asian American woman. Actually, her father is Asian and Chinese, if I remember right. And then her mother is Egyptian. And her name is Cleopatra Cleopatra Kim. And I kind of started this one when my last cat was gone, because her name was Cleopatra. I had her for 21 years, and she was 21 when she was gone. And it kind of like the reappropriating of the holiday season and turning it into our wedding helped. It in a way kind of helped, but I've let it go too long. I need to get back to finishing it. But until then, I'm going to share some of this with you. So let me first start with Bold and Restless Lives. So fade in. If you were to look down at the right time upon our planet from... Oh, wait a minute. See my editing. Okay. Oh, okay, got it. I'm sorry. fade in. If you were to look down at the right time upon our planet from space, you could see the United States having a nationwide clear and sunny day, just the basic topography visible. Moving towards Earth and near the center of this country, the nuances of the Rocky Mountains reveal themselves, stretching westward in a massive line and sloping downwards on the eastern side. It would take moving closer to bring the ability to see how the wind is working presently, but all the trees are still. Down the slopes and through crevices, the Chinook, warm, dry winds blow downwards before passing through the trees. Legend has it, if the Chinook crosses through you, unbelievable results are possible, at times beneficial and at other times quite frightening. To find out for sure, you would begin to climb the slope, through a crevice or two, until you found, hidden by vegetation, the town of Tempest. A beautiful young woman with long wavy black hair and wearing a short red toga-style dress was sitting barefoot on one of the short stone walls flanking the border, which were supporting an arched welcome sign. The woman looks up at you and, smiling brightly, waves invitingly. Bold and Restless Lives by Sheridan Delo. Number 1. A woman of mature age was coming down the baby grand staircase of Wishrum's B&B and Spa. The railing was strong oak and the carpet runner on the stairs was runway red. A spotted, supporting hand slid along the banister as she confidently descended each step. Wearing a white silk robe edged in marabou, her hair was now beautifully more silver than blonde. Leaving a marabou mule behind, the proud woman never stopped. Instead, there came 2 quick whistles as a call. What started down the stairs then could barely be conceived. 20 years previously, the Countess Gretchen Young cloned herself for the purposes of having someone in service for the winter of the woman's life, and she was annoyingly allergic to anything living, humans excluded. There had been, fortunately, an accident in the lab, and the clone developed an anomaly during growth. Wearing the same robe as her mistress, albeit unsuccessfully, the girl's chubby feet were bare. There were only wisps of hair on the clone's head, with deep creases in the fat rolls of her arms and legs. The young woman had accidentally grown as a baby, so was a roughly 5'9" infant with the cognizance of a 20-year-old. Bending to retrieve the shoe, she continued following her older version. Disturbingly, a smear of pink gloss had been smudged across her lips. Approaching the front desk, the Countess slowed to a stop, with her arm out for her warped duplicate to also stop. Someone was in the process of checking out. Taking a moment, the two looked around. "Sissy," Gretchen called out, already revealing a German accent. Pointing around the room, she asked, "Was all this wood here yesterday?" Sissy flapped her chubby arms and gurgled as a handkerchief appeared in the giant baby's segmented fingers to wipe away drool before she answered, "Actually, to me it looks like there's less." At the desk, a man was checking out, being helped by Rocky Monroe, 16. His mother, Skye, was the owner of the B&B. "You're a hard worker, young man," the guest praised. "I've watched you hustle. I can see big things for you, but finish school first, or you'll always regret it." "Yes, sir, thank you." Rocky had a broad smile on his face, almost like he was holding back a few laughs. Picking his luggage up to make his departure, the guest told Rocky, "This place is the best secret I've stumbled upon. I'll talk to the big guys and see about a presence in my commercial, or at least the website." He turned and walked towards the door. "Thank you, Mr. Shatner," Rocky called through clenched teeth. Slowly turning his head, he whimpered as beads of sweat appeared on his forehead when he frustratingly found himself face to face with the Countess. "Young man," the woman announced, "I have a complaint. Someone on my floor had a wild party last night. I barely got any sleep, and poor Sissy cried all night." Clearing his throat, Rocky explained, "Excuse me, but that was you, Countess, remember? I called you 18 times. Finally, you sang a verse of La Vie en Rose to me before leaving the receiver off the hook." The Countess pondered. "That couldn't possibly have been me. I was in bed trying to sleep, starting at..." She was lost to ponder again. Rocky, needing to get rid of her, said quickly, "When I came..." Okay, sorry about that. Rocky needed to get rid of her, so he said quickly, "When I came to your door, you had climbed onto the closet shelf and were sexting the Vice-Chancellor of Germany." Taking a step back, the Countess gasped, "What? I thought I'd done that in a dream." Turning to the grown toddler, the Countess asked, "What did you give me, Sissy?" Giggling, Sissy admitted, with incidental spittle, "Mescaline, But if I knew you would be so loud," and left the sentence unfinished. Suddenly the Countess needed to brace herself against the front desk. "Dosed by my own service clone. Young man, I can't possibly check out in this condition. Please extend my stay another day." Leaning against her own giant baby version of herself, the Countess climbed the stairs. "I may have to skip breakfast. Perhaps just kippers and sausage and eggs. But don't forget to heat the goulash this time. Sissy, your bowl of sauerkraut will be from a fresh jar, so there's that." When the guests were almost up the stairs, Rocky couldn't hold it in anymore. He blew air from his mouth, and his fist struck down on the varnished wood counter. "Oh my God, that was close," he said, backing away from the desk. Facing the boy, a girl rose from her knees. It was fellow classmate Jello Crown, who had gotten her name because that was how her mother thought J-Lo was pronounced. Wearing her school clothes, a green polo shirt and brown skirt, her auburn hair was cut pixie style. Rocky was zipped up and already shuffling papers while Jello watched. "You should probably get going," he told the girl. "My mom will be back soon." Grabbing some random papers, Rocky walked through the door into the office. Jello's shoulders slumped a little, but she still smiled as she left. And I'm just going to jump right into the next one because I've already told you what I'm doing right here, right now, and there's really no need to say more. This will just, give you a taste of it. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. If you want to hear more, that's great. But there's also a whole lot of other shit to sink your teeth into if you don't like any of these. But here now you're going to see a bit of a difference. And I'm doing a lot of writing when it's based more. In fact, it's happening in this area where I live. Okay. Patches by Sheridan D. Lowe. Once the deal was all signed and done, I drove directly to the location of my new agency. There were pros and cons, but I was confident. On the plus side, the rent was less because it was a sort of blind spot on Peachtree Street in Buckhead, just north of Midtown Atlanta. Also, whoever rented the space before had built a couple of rooms which were perfect for an office or two. On the negative side, the parking was behind the building and hard to spot, but the front entrance was a wide glass front. Parking behind and below the building, I climbed the iron steps which were endless to finally enter my first agency via the back entrance. Being early retired from the police force was, after getting shot on duty, my captain had pulled me aside and put me in touch with someone in need of a private investigator. It had been 3 years since, and business was good, so I decided to treat myself to a physical location. Opening the front door, I went out and stared in through the window, talking to myself. Cleopatra Kim, private investigator. The Kim Agency. C. Kim P.I. Then I was seeing my reflection. My bangs were much longer than usual, but my straight black hair reached mid-back. Happy 30th, I told myself. My single self, single at 30. And that's the way it is. I was looking at the eye patch now, a constant invitation to be asked about the shooting. Looking to the right, there was only a school bus approaching on the road. There was a Turkish man who was sweeping the patio of his restaurant. Looking left revealed one of the tattoo artists smoking a cigarette with a client mid-job. Scrunching my brow, I looked beyond the row of shops to the bridge over Peachtree Creek. Crossing unattended was a very young boy. He wore the uniform of the school across the street while hefting a backpack. Curiously, he was also wearing an eye patch. Back inside, I began to make notes on my phone for what I would need in terms of furniture. Naturally, I would start with the bare minimum. I had already invested in business cards, flyers, and monogram stationery. The phone line would also need to be installed, so I went around counting outlets. Thinking I could just get a business line added to my cell account, my eye was caught by the boy, who was standing just outside the door looking in. Standing upright, I stared back at him, but he only stared back at me, although with a pleasant expression. "Hi," finally came out of my mouth. Waving to me, the boy asked, "What kind of store will you be?" "I'm not," I started to explain. "It'll be a private investigator's agency." "Are you alone?" At the mention of private investigator, the boy's eyes widened and he took one step across the threshold. "Mom picks me up after school, but I always tell her 30 minutes after the time so I can walk around. I know all the shop owners here, and they know I'm here." Laughing at the implication, I guided the boy out front where we sat on the window ledge together. Showing him my shield, which I happened to still be carrying, I saw curiosity in his touch, but I got the idea it was about the gold, not what it represented. "Nice," he finally said. "Is that how you got the patch?" "Yeah," I answered, pointing a finger gun to my eye patch. "Shot it by a perp. Now you go." Without missing a beat, he told me, "I was kidnapped, and they sent one of my eyes to my parents as proof it was me." Unsure if the boy was lying or not, I asked, "How old are you?" "6," came the answer. "I'm 7. They say not only that I'm above average for my age, but also insufferable, and at times unnerving." My jaw dropped, so I lifted it to say, "It's a horrible thing to say to a child." "Oh, no one told me," he said, chuckling. "Mama keeps her computer password on a slip of paper underneath the keyboard, and the psychiatrist I have to go to now is surprisingly password naive. Besides, they're right." Barely containing my laughter, my hand reached out as I told the boy, "Cleopatra Kim, private investigator." Shaking my hand in return, the boy replied, "Waldo Rochester, 2nd grader." Now, I'm skipping ahead just a bit for this next one more section. Every light in the tiny one-bedroom apartment was on. The television and iPod were silent. As much quiet as possible is what I was after. What I was about to do was not an everyday thing, but talking to Waldo earlier kind of made me need to again. Only one sound remained, and turning the tub faucet, even it ended. Finishing the same joint from earlier, I watched the water in the tub steaming and slowing until the water was still. Drops of water escaped from the fixture, but even those came to a rest. The more the present sounds disappeared, the other ones came louder. The sounds I had already heard and could never escape. Stepping into the tub, there was a continuous thundering noise heard softly. Wood was snapping, metal wrenched, and screams and calls were coming from every direction, near and far. Submerging myself up to the neck, my eye closed. The water began to move, increasing speed until it rushed past my body, growing depth. My arms began to feel scratching from the soaking wet tree bark passing by. Something dull and metal hit me in the side. I began to duplicate cries of fear. Opening my eye, the water rushed past me up to my shoulders, having picked up debris from the shore to this point. There were a couple of other people holding trees. Then one was swept away. The calls were coming now, screams, names. Was that my father's voice? My scream was weaker than I expected. His voice called my name, then was cut off again. I called out, then listened. His voice came again, much further away now, eventually gone. Soon the flow of water slowed, then stopped. Something slimy brushed my calf, and I squealed, which sounded like a frog's croak. The water began to return, and the bodies came. Refusing to look at them closely, my grandmother's voice came to me, not out there in the desolation calling out, but the last thing she told me. The vacation had been tailored around my grandmother after her husband had died. This little-known island off the coast of Japan was as far as my mother could get her own mother to travel. At 16, I was already making plans for myself back in America, so I figured this might be the last family vacation for me. Since our last visit, word of mouth must have really spread because the lone resort on the island was nearly booked. With the 40s themed resort in the center of the island, which was more or less round, it always boasted a 360-degree beachfront. Besides the main resort, there were bungalows scattered around, some in the trees and some near the beach. Ours was in the trees. The next morning after our arrival, I woke to find my brother Orion, age 7, was up and gone already, most likely to his hidden cave. Still in bed, my parents tried to pretend they weren't having sex, and my grandmother was slipping out the door. Throwing on a muumuu, I joined her to find her destination was the gift shop. She was sadder than I'd ever seen her. How tragic it would be and appear if she actually stopped holding on. The day was sunny and perfect. At lunch, it seemed like a good time to do some snorkeling, so I made mental note to ask Orion if he wanted to join me. When my grandmother appeared with her purchases for that day, we went to the center gardens to meet the rest of the family. Mom and Dad were already there waiting when we got to the gardens. There was a rumbling sound, and my father looked up in the sky. Somewhere some china broke. Orion was just joining us then, half dry, but My grandmother was smiling, genuinely smiling. Unanimously, we decided to eat a light lunch on the beach. Afterwards, we strolled into the trees casually, individually. I caught my grandmother looking at me, and she was sad again. Something's going on at the resort, my mother said nonchalantly. Looking in that direction, there did seem to be some sort of excitement with the staff. Another stronger rumbling came at once. Turning, I looked back towards the beach, and just off the shore I could see the ocean coming. At the tree line, my brother stood mesmerized by what he saw. Taking a deep breath, my parents' voices called first to him. My grandmother was holding my hands. My only sibling turned and ran 3 steps before disappearing in the water. My grandmother squeezed my hands, and I looked at her in the eyes. "Take the pain," she told me, "and make it into courage." My mother's voice called out half of my name, and when I looked, she was not there. My grandmother had stepped away from me, and I discovered she had placed my hands on the trunk of a tree. Turning, the old woman faced the water and with her arms outstretched. "And never lose your grandeur," she was able to finish saying as the deluge engulfed her. I clutched the tree as hard as I could, just when the ocean tried to also claim me. As I climbed the tree with difficulty in order to reach the water's surface, my mind also climbed away from the memory. My eyes opened, and I looked at the side of the tub. Resting there was the only thing I had found in the aftermath. My grandmother must have brought it to the resort. The often polished metal of the detective badge gleamed, the badge that had been my grandfather's. And it's just a little taste of it, but that's, just a little bit going on. Next week I'm going to work on a trailer so that we can then get actual complete stories on there. But I wanted to get a few words put out there, and also use it to help me test this whole process, the reading of it. Part 2, I'm gonna have to guess as I was reading realize I'm gonna have to get some tea with slippery elm maybe, or I don't know what else will be good, but yeah, because I'll get scratchy, and it'll be like trying to listen to a key along a string of a bass guitar. So that's that. That'll be a short post, I believe. Oh, barely. I guess Monday with my fake fiction report, as well as what I will be doing that week in a trailer form for one of the 2 morning serials. And that's it. All right. Have a great weekend.